Hi, baby. All right, so I'm gonna get right in. I know that you really wanted to learn how to cook, and I'm really sorry that we haven't been able to do that in person because I really want to do that with you too. But while we are in quarantine, I thought of a way I could get around that. So I'm going to be recording a few videos, and you can do this at home, and it's sort of going to be like we're cooking together a bit. So today, and this is the first one I'm recording, today I'm going to try making shrimp pasta with Parmesan, and it's a little spicy, but you don't have to put in the spice ingredients if you don't want to. So I'm just going to go through the ingredients first, and to start off, we have a bell pepper, which is the least spicy kind of pepper. There might actually be others, but I'm pretty sure it's the least spicy. Then I got this gigantic block of Parmesan cheese. I always really prefer getting it in a block, but obviously you can use grated Parmesan. That's probably what most people would use. But it's just beautiful, isn't it? I love it. And next we got salt and pepper, pretty standard. I personally have sea salt and ground black pepper, but any kind of salt and pepper does. I don't even know how they're different. One of them's pink. And also next we have shrimp. Now this is actually a really large bag, and we're only going to use about half. But yeah, shrimp is actually probably my favorite meat. So if that's one thing you should know about me, I really like shrimp. And also, because it's actually roughly Mediterranean, there's going to be a lot of olive oil. And more than just like drizzling the pan or anything, this takes a lot of olive oil. And I really like it because it actually gives it this really weird but nice creamy texture, really good tasting creamy texture, and it's very healthy for you. Next up, and you don't have to add this if you don't want to, but we have crushed chili flakes, which is what is going to be making it spicy. I still find it's not all that spicy, and my sister can eat it, and she's really a stickler for spice. But if you don't want any spiciness at all, you definitely don't have to add it. Next up, we have brown sugar, which might surprise you, but when you add it in the marinade, it sort of makes it like little, kind of nice and caramelly, and I actually really like the taste of it. And also, we have garlic going into it, which is just the best plant ever for cooking. Usually I add double in what you're supposed to, but I'm going to keep it limited this time because I know not everybody shares my affinity for garlic. And the pasta itself that we're using is going to be penne. It's standard, it's pasta. Most of them are really made out of the same general components, but I do like the shape for this. Also, we have soy sauce, and since it is very high in salt, you're going to want to watch out how much salt you add in at the end. And lastly, we have green onion. I really like green onion, especially on Mexican food. It doesn't taste like an onion, but I do really like the taste. But I love onions too. Don't get me wrong about onions. All onions are great, is the takeaway. One last thing you should know is that you are going to need to start preparing this beforehand, so you might need to do this a day after, because the shrimp is actually going to be put into a marinade, which means it's swimming in a lot of the ingredients, and then you dump out the whole thing into the skillet, and the shrimps basically absorb all of the flavors of most of the other things. So I'm going to get started right into the next step now. The first thing we need to do is to defrost the shrimp. So what I have here is a bowl. I ran out of any actual bowl, so I have to use this dish. But it's filled with warm water, and this is absolutely the fastest way to defrost shrimp. So what I want to do is I want to pour about half of this bag into the dish to start, and this will be all the shrimp that I have in my dish later. So we're just going to wait for that to thaw out. All right, honey. So the shrimp has since thawed out. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want another bowl here to discard all of your little tails. So you want to make sure you don't get the whole thing. So a lot of people, what they do when they eat shrimp is that they just take it and then they rip it apart. But you're actually going to miss a huge amount of chunk of meat that's in here. So what you want to do is you want to pinch it firmly here and then slide it off like such. And you see there's so much left off. Like this might be taken off. So inside the bowl, I push all of the shrimp that are floating to one side and then deposit the completed ones on the other. So that way I work through them one by one. So just take one out, deposit the shell there, move it across. And you can actually do this pretty quickly since they usually come off pretty easily. Now what I have right here are actually previously deveined shrimp. But in case you get the other kind, I'm going to tell you how you're supposed to devein. So first of all, in the deveining process, you would take that off. Now next of all, you would take a paring knife and you would find the vein. Right here it's colored orange because it has since been removed and pre-cooked. But what you would want to do is that you would want to carefully take the paring knife, put it at the base of where it starts, and then you would want to drag it down through it. And then you would physically pick up the vein with your fingers and lightly pull it out. So I actually did get a bit of a vein here. It doesn't have any material in it, but you can see it right there. You would take that, it would be black. You would take this and you would deposit it into either your nearest garbage or the receptacle you have for the shells, because this is all waste. Now, we get rid of the vein because it's actually filled with fecal matter, so it's not sanitary to have it in there. Most shrimp you buy will come previously deveined, but if you do get shrimp that doesn't come deveined, then you do need to do this. So anyways, I'll peel the rest of these and get on to the next step. Now comes the part where we make the marinade. So the marinade is basically this blend of different flavors and spices and things that you all put in together and then keep the meat in. So that way the meat absorbs all the flavor throughout a rather long time. Now, this marinade only calls for it to be around 30 minutes, but due to the time it is right now, I'm actually going to leave it in overnight so it soaks in even more of the flavor. So I'm going to get this marinade started off with 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. I'm just going to first put it in a measuring cup and then just dump it right in. The olive oil will make it taste extra creamy when it's done. It's also a very healthy fatty acid. It's very good for you. Next up, we have some of this absolutely delicious Parmesan cheese. Now, it's totally acceptable to use the pre-grated stuff, but I do like using blocks because I feel like they come out a lot better. So on a cheese grater, you're going to use maybe one of the finer holes because you're supposed to get these really thin for a marinade and for Parmesan specifically. So that way it can really spread out evenly and it can really absorb the taste. So you need 1/4 of the cup of this in total. So what we're going to do is we're going to grate for a bit, and then we're going to continually add what we have into the measuring cup. So this may be a little hard to get a grip on because of the shape, but if you're patient, it will go by pretty quick. So now we see what we have, and then we deposit it into the measuring cup, and we're going to repeat that a few times until it is stuffed to the top. After you have enough, you're just going to go right ahead and dump that into your marinade. Our next addition to the marinade is going to be 4 cloves of garlic, and I rinsed off and washed this knife from the last time so it isn't still coated with shrimp. So what you want to do with garlic, and I'll see if I can't get that really close, is you want to go to both sides and you want to chop off a little bit, and then you want to do that on both sides, and then you remove them to the top. So that's just how it should look. And then next, you're going to lay the knife on top of it, on the flat of it, and you're going to push down with your hand until you feel it sort of give loose. So when it gives loose like that, that means that the skin is exceptionally easy to peel off. So you're going to quickly do that for all 4. After you have all of your garlic nice and peeled, we're going to want to go ahead and mince them. So you go ahead and you take your garlic and you just start cutting it largely, but then we're going to cut it into smaller and smaller pieces. So you rearrange them, you go at it again, you push them all back, you go at it again, and you're going to want to keep doing it until it is at a very fine and small consistency. That way it can be absorbed by the marinade. So you shouldn't really be using a knife that small to cut this since there's a lot of it. It's going to be a lot easier if you get a decent knife about this size. And the way that you cut garlic is you put your fist down on the front of it over here to keep it in place, and then you move it up and down between all of the garlic, and then you move it back into place, and then you go the other way. This actually gets it cut really quickly and gets it to a really nice minced consistency. It calls for it minced. And after just a while, it should be good. It really shouldn't take you too long as you do this fast enough, and it should be quite easy. All right, on to the next step. After your garlic is all good and minced, you want to use the flat end, or the not sharp half of the blade, to go ahead and pick it up. So you scoop it onto the blade, and then you take your bowl, and then you're going to want to run your finger down on the dull side to get all of the garlic in. And then you try to do that again as you sort up the remaining garlic left over. You might have to do it 2 or 3 times. And anyways, that's your garlic inside of the marinade. Next, you take 1 tablespoon of brown sugar and put that in the marinade. Next, we're going to be adding some soy sauce for some salty goodness. And you're going to be adding 2 teaspoons, 1 at a time. Try to do it carefully and over it. And I want to take a second to tell you to clean as you go. Whenever I'm done putting an ingredient in and I don't need it anymore, I immediately stuff it back to where it's supposed to be. And at the end of the meal, make sure you take care of whatever pot or pan you put it in and get that in the dish with soap as soon as you can. It is the most integral cooking skill of all time to clean as you go. Anyways, we're going to be finishing up this marinade in just a bit. Just in case I said it wrong last time, it is 2 teaspoons of the soy sauce. I often get tablespoon and teaspoon mixed up, so I don't know if I did, but I just want to make sure that you're using the right thing. So then next off, we are going to use half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now, this is what's going to make it spicy, and it is 100% optional on whether or not you want to put them in or not. Personally, I like my stuff spicy, so I'm going to deposit that right in. Now, I'm going to give you an aerial view of what the marinade should look like. Obviously, it's a lot of olive oil, and the Parmesan cheese sort of is a little bit transparent at the bottom there. So when we have this marinade, what we're going to do to make sure that everything is properly, it can't be homogenized, but everything is sort of one entity, is we want to take a fork and we want to whisk it. Now, whisking all of these things together, because obviously the brown sugar and the soy sauce have quite a deep color, it is actually going to change the color of it, so you won't even really be able to tell that there's olive oil in it at a point. So when the marinade is all mixed together, it should look like this. It doesn't require too much stirring, but you should always scout through to make sure that all the blocks of brown sugar are potentially crushed. But it looks good, so we're just going to add it to our shrimp now. So if your bowl is large enough, the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your shrimp from earlier, drain it into the sink, and you're just going to place all of your shrimp inside the marinade, and then you're going to give it a really nice stir to make sure that all the shrimp is coated well. So you're going to want to go down with a fork and scoop up, and then mix around, down with a fork, scoop up. This way you get most of the marinade to the top of it, so that way it can evenly coat all of the shrimp. So once you got that out of the way, because it's a marinade, you're actually going to want to put the entire thing inside of a Ziploc bag. So after it's all done and like sort of semi-coated, you just want it spread around, not necessarily on every piece of shrimp. You're going to want to open your bag, and you're going to want to start scooping some in just to make sure it stands right side up, so you're able to pour the rest in. You might need a few to where it gets to this point. I don't know why the bags work this way, but that's just a fact of life that they are annoying sometimes. So now it should be sticking open up here. I can't give you a good view of it, but you're going to want to sort of half place the bag inside and push the rest of it in. And the entire marinade goes in there. You try to scoop up as much as you can from the bottom to make sure that it all enters there. Just going to give it a few more shakes, and that should be good. You want to remove as much air as possible so the marinade is always touching the shrimp. So you squeeze it, you push it down, get as much air out as you can, and then you push the Ziploc together at the end, sealing it in so no air escapes and it all relatively stays in contact with itself. So when you have it all in a bag, you're going to want to give it a few churns and flip it around a bit. It's actually quite fun to mess around with, sort of like a bit of a stress ball. Oh, it actually popped outside of it. Oh, it popped open a bit. That's unfortunate. I have to squeeze out all the air again. But you want to make sure it's completely sealed, and you move it around sort of like a stress ball to make sure it's completely coated, and then you have it sink all to the bottom. What you want to do next is you want to sort of lap it around, and then you want to place it inside of your fridge in an open space. Some marinades you would need to stick it on a plate, so just to be safe, I'm placing it on one before I put it in. And you're going to leave that in there for around the ballpark of 30 minutes to overnight. I wouldn't leave it in much longer than that, but that should really allow it to soak in all of the flavors that you've put in thus far. And you're going to, a few times, want to take it out and churn it again to make sure it's all soaking in evenly. Right, it is the next day now, and here's the marinade. It's all done. Absolutely beautiful. But before we get started on the pasta or anything else, we're probably going to need to chop up the fruit that we're going to put in there, well, fruit and a vegetable. So obviously the stem is completely unedible on a bell pepper. So what you want to do is you want to take the blade of the knife in and sort of carefully move it around. And you want to do it in such where the path of the knife would not go towards you if you were to mess up. And at a certain point, it's going to be loose enough where you can dig in and pull the core right out, and that'll get almost all of the seeds out. And from then on, you cut it relatively normally. Cut it into halves, and then you cut it along. Let's see if I can't get a better angle at that. You cut it down this way. And you're going to do that with all of it, and then you're going to go across to cut it into individual chunks. Because these are going to be relatively small, unlike the ones that you may have received in lunch, because they're going into a pasta meal. So you line them all up like this, and then you take small little pieces each way, sort of like you make a cross section. And that way you'll get a bunch of really good small pieces like this. On to the green onion. Now this is done a little bit different because you're going to cut along it the whole way through, and you're not going to do anything additionally on the side. You're just going to get like little rings. So you want to place your fingers at the ends, and you want to do it in a way where even if you come down at a bad angle, it won't, like it's on the way. It's on the way like this. You lean them in so you can't cut yourself, and even so it'll bounce off the nail because of the angle it's coming at. So you want to put in quick, meaningful slices across, and you want to try to get them relatively thin, and you'll do that for the whole thing, and that's how you get green onions. And as it splits across, you just basically do the two things. You try to line them up relatively, and you still just achieve the same goal. Also remember to wash all of your produce before you start cutting into it, and you'll be a-okay. So the next step in this is boiling our water, because we are making pasta. So you want to get a nice pot here. You want to fill it about a third of the way, and you want to go ahead and turn your stove up to high for that one to get it boiling quickly. And now this is very important because I've heard that if you don't do this, an Italian breaks into your room and they smash your kneecaps. But what you need to do is you need to take some salt, and you need to salt the water before you end up using it, because that makes the pasta taste a lot better. We have now reached the point where the pot is boiling. So now I'm going to go ahead and add this pasta. I'm going to try to do it one-handed so I can keep the camera up. Okay, so you're going to want to put like a bit in, depending on how many people you're serving. It sort of gets cloudy, so it's hard to see. But I think that should be about good. Maybe I'll add in a bit more. But you're going to want to take out some sort of wooden spatula like this, and you're going to want to stir around occasionally, and every once in a while you're going to take one out and taste it to see what the consistency really is, to see if it's ready. After your pasta has been boiling for a while, you're going to want to switch your attention to a pan on here. So you want to get that hot at about medium-high, and then you want to put in your shrimp mixture. All of it right in. So every part of the marinade is going to go in. Again, it's going to be difficult for me to do this one-handed. But when you actually do this, do your best to squeeze the rest out of the bag. And then you're just going to be cooking and moving around the shrimp simultaneously with the pasta. Okay, so when you feel like the pasta is almost ready and you feel like it might just be like another minute or two, that's when you're going to add your produce, because if you put pepper in too long, it gets sickly sweet, but you still want it to be heated up. So I'm just going to go ahead and add all of this to the shrimp mixture and just wait maybe another minute or two. My pasta is all ready now, so now I'm just going to go ahead and switch this off, and then I'm going to bring over the pot to a strainer that I have in the sink, and I'm just going to pour it all in there to make sure that all the water gets out and it doesn't become too watery, because it already has liquid ingredients in that over there, and that's going to make it plenty good. Be sure to put your pan back on the stove, because sometimes your countertop won't be fire resistant. And after you strain it, you don't need to put it back into the pan, which is good, because sometimes when you put newly cooked pasta into an already hot, or like a newly dried out pasta into an already hot pan, then you'll end up burning the whole thing. So you're just going to go ahead and deposit it right into your skillet, and you're going to try to move it all around, and at that point it should pretty much all be done. Now comes the best part, because you get even more cheese. So we're garnishing it with Parmesan again, and on your cheese grater you're going to want to use the small uniform little ceramic part, and you just want to grate as much as you think you need. I don't necessarily add Parmesan to it overall, because if I put it into the mixture right now and just continue cooking it, that would just make all the Parmesan melt into it. So what I like to use this Parmesan for is to get something sort of solid as a garnish on whatever I have. Right now I'm just cooking for me, so I'm not going to make a whole lot, just about this for my personal plate. Just about this. And then I'm basically done. I'm just going to put what I want into a bowl. I'm going to put what I want in it specifically. You can also add in salt and pepper. And fun fact, the older you are, the less you taste either of these. So generally that's why children don't really salt their food, and I don't really feel the need to. So that's basically the whole thing done. And I just want to remind you that I love you very much, and you mean so much to me. And you're so insanely beautiful and generous and kind, and I want to do everything I can to make it up for you for just being so amazing this whole year. It's just been absolutely great.